All right, this is a test of the pastor's broadcasting system. Since I said it was a test, here it is. Opportunity to shine. You don't get to answer. Sorry. All right, what two books of the Bible start with the three words, in the beginning? This is an easy one. They get hard. Genesis is one, yes. John, very good. Denisha all right, mark that down. Denisha gets an A+ for today. I always think that's funny because we have to test the microphone, so might as well make it a test, yes. All right, so I want to tell you, we had our golf tournament ended up being yesterday. What a wonderful tournament it was. The weather couldn't have been better. We lost a few golfers because we had to postpone it a week, but I think everybody that was there had a good time, and we raised over $15,000 for our short-term mission effort, so that's really exciting. And this was our 10th golf tournament, 10th anniversary, and I figure, and this is approximate, somewhere we've raised about $120,000 for missions through that golf tournament. Each year it kind of gets a little bit bigger, and so many of our sponsors will automatically sponsor, be a sponsor next year. So God has really blessed that tournament. Yes?
And my only claim to fame is I was the only woman playing it.
Yes, and we had one woman this year. Usually we have more than that. But Melinda got the prize for female of the tournament. I don't know what the prize is. We'll have to work that out. Yeah. But I just wanted to share that because it's really exciting. We've had to cancel most of our short-term mission fundraising events because most of them involve food. We haven't been able to do a lot of stuff. But that was one that we're still able to do, and God really blessed it. There's no doubt about that. And also, just a reminder, now we're entering May. It's not a time to start disappearing because the weather's so nice. Now is the time to come even more because next week is Mother's Day. 2 weeks, it's Confirmation Sunday during the 10:30 service. 3 weeks, it's Graduate Recognition Service at the 10:30 service. We got Ascension Day service in there. How many of you have ever come to an Ascension Day service at St. John's? All right, some of you have. That is our least attended service of the year. Now, why is that? Well, you guys didn't even have it until I came, and like 5 years after I was here, I said, I kind of miss not having an Ascension Day service. And they said, well, sure, go ahead and have it. Now, that didn't mean they were going to come, but the elders approved it. But I want to encourage you to come because if you think about it, the message of Ascension Day is really a powerful message. I mean, you have the Great Commission that is part of Ascension. You've got what is Christ doing now when we say seated at the right hand of God. That can be a great focus for Ascension Day. We got him promising to return. That could be a focus of Ascension Day. There's all kinds of deep things in that day. I think Pastor Ligoon, is preaching this time, so I'm not going to tell you what he's going to preach on. But, I mean, there's so much good stuff. But come and join us. I promise it probably won't hurt. May help. Yeah. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, yes, right on time. Perfect. So we're looking at Genesis 1, now starting at 28. And let's just review where we ended. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So we just had the creation of Adam and Eve. Now, by the way, in Genesis 2, here God establishes the creation of Adam and Eve. In Genesis 2, he describes the process. So sometimes people talk about Genesis 2 as if it's, that it's following the events of Genesis 1. It's an explanation of part of Genesis 1. It's not, a separate thing. But here's where we go for verse 28. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. I'm going to stop there for right now. Be fruitful and multiply. Do you know one of the big problems facing societies today, especially Western societies, Europe, North America?
Not having enough children.
We're not having near enough children. So many countries in Europe, other than through immigration, would be in population decline. America is too. If it wasn't for immigration, we would be losing numbers. Where does that show up? It shows up in things like Social Security. You know, I'm going to tell you, all of you young people, have lots of babies because my Social Security is at risk. I mean, I don't want it to, but we used to have like 12 people working for every retired person. And then it got down to 8, and now I don't know what the most recent number is. I think it's like 3. Well, no wonder it's not financially solvent because, but God's plan is for us to have children in most cases. Now, here's where I think it's critical. See, I look at my life, and God has blessed me, and I've been able to do lots of things, but I think the best thing I did with my life is the children I brought into the world, or adopted, because God is reaching even more people through them. He uses them in lots of interesting and powerful ways. But for Christians, we need babies. We need young people. We need children. Average age of a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. This is an estimate. I don't really have the number. So if you go to an average congregation, what's the average age of a member? Yeah, it's in the 60s a lot of times. And, I mean, in Bible class, there's some of you that don't have a little bit of this color hair, but there's not that many. Tamp, I'm glad you're here. Pastor Laguten's got dark hair. Vanessa, very dark. Oh, don't count, you're telling me? But, I mean, that's just the reality. So I was a vacancy pastor at church in Bach, Michigan, St. Peter's Lutheran Church in Bach, Michigan. Now, you got to love those German-sounding names up in Michigan. And twice when they were in between pastors, I became their vacancy pastor, and I'd do church services at my church and then go up there and do a church service there. And the church I was pastor at, Grace Lutheran in Fairgrove, had lots of children. I mean, we had an active Sunday school, active VBS. There were crying babies and 2-year-olds that make noise in church, just the way it's supposed to be. And then I'd go up to St. Peter's in Bach. Average age of a member there at that time was in the 70s. On a good Sunday, we might have 2 children. That's less than 18. If I had a children's sermon, at the most, 1 would come forward, and probably not even 1. Guess what happened to St. Peter's in Bach? It's no longer in existence. And so now the good news is, St. John's, well, during COVID-19, we've had less children than we used to, but they're still members of the church, and they're starting to come back now. Did you notice on Palm Sunday, during the 10:30 service especially, we had quite a few at the 8 o'clock service, but I don't know how many that was. That might have been like 30 kids, which was the most kids we'd had for any service in months, and I was so glad they were there because that's what makes that service, that processional so special, is the kids carrying those palm branches and poking each other some on the way and, and all that good stuff. But if we're going to continue to reach generations with the gospel, you know what? We need to be training a generation or 2 after us to take our place. Average family in the United States today has how many children? 1.75, thank you. And I've always confused on that because I don't know where they're cutting off, but yeah. But it's less than 2. And really, to replace population, you need like 2.2 children average per family or something like that. Go ahead, Darryl.
But I can't be ultra-liberal top thinking is trying to change the world, and in order to do that, they've got to get rid of us old folks and indoctrinate the new ones.
Yes.
And so that's why we need to be
Christians need to be having...
Because if not, in another generation, it's
Christianity we're one generation from being, and when I say this, I don't mean the whole church is gone, but in the United States, we could be one generation from being largely eliminated. We can become like Europe, where they have huge churches that average 13 in worship, or something like that, even without COVID. Because we're training the future church. We're training disciple makers, evangelists. We're training our children. So I just want to say up front, be fruitful and multiply is God's plan for his people. And I'm not telling you that if you're my age, you have to have another child, because I'm not volunteering. Oh, well, Denise can't. So, I mean, Denise, would you be okay if we did that? Grandchildren okay? Yes. Okay. All right. We'll go that route then. Yeah. Yes.
When you're downstairs in the coffee place, the place is running with children.
Yes.
The problem is the parents don't take them to Sunday school.
Well, yeah, we can't make a broad statement. Some parents don't. But I will tell you, why did we add a third year to our confirmation programs? Because we had 7th and 8th grade. Both years were involved the study of the catechism, okay? And then we added a 6th grade class. Now, that was a long time ago now, maybe 15 years ago. But why did we do that?
Because of the lack of education.
Because children were not being brought to Sunday school, and we found that they did not necessarily know even what I would consider the basic stories of the Bible. I want children to grow up knowing who Adam and Eve were, knowing about Jonah, knowing all of the major things in Jesus' life. Sunday school does that, but more and more, Sunday mornings used to be church time, and Wednesday nights, right? Do football teams and soccer teams and all that other stuff now sometimes have stuff on Sunday morning? Yes. And, it drove me nuts because even way back when my daughter Joanna was swimming on a swim team, what was that called, Denise? I can't remember. Catawba Valley something. But they would have weekend events, and I would take her for Saturday, and this is all over the Carolinas, and then most families just stay the night wherever they're at, and then but they'd have more on Sunday. And I said up front to the coach, we're not ever going to be here on a Sunday. Yeah, I know. Okay. But, the expectation is you'll just take off whole weekends. You won't have your kids in church. Yes?
The statement he made about that they don't take them to Sunday school, there's the flip side of that too. And the flip side of that is, as Christians, we need to be supporting and encouraging other Christians. Because I remember when we had our third child, I had 4 or 5 people come up to me in the church and say, "You do not know how that happens."
Yeah, don't you know what causes that?
Why are you having a third child? So if the people that you're going to church with are encouraging it, and you hear that more and more, that, and I hear many, many people complaining when there's kids making noise in church. Why don't they take them out of church? Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? And I'll tell you, as a mother, your children seem so loud to you, and you battle with, do I stay, do I go, do I stay, do I go? It's a battle. But sometimes you feel like if every time they make a noise, you take them out, the child's winning.
Well, and they learned that I can get out and go play with toys in the nursery if I just make a little noise. So what do I think about kids making noise in the pews and the baby squabbling a little bit here and there? What do I think about that?
You said you can always out-talk.
One, I've got a whole lot of volume you haven't even experienced. Because, I was trained on the theater, and we didn't have microphones when I was trained. We had dinosaurs that we used. It was a long time ago. And some of you are saying, yeah, I believe that. I'm not that old. Come on. But there's no competition with me. I'll be louder than they are. Don't worry. But I rejoice and thank God that St. John's has grandparents and great-grandparents, yes, and then we have parents, and then we have children, including little children. Let the little children come to me. How are children going to get used to going to church if we don't take them? How are they going to? So, yes, be fruitful and multiply. That is an important plan. And I'm just saying that. Now, in our society, you're considered evil. I have 6 kids. I'm evil. Why?
Because you're destroying the environment.
I'm destroying the environment. Our carbon footprint is way too big. I mean, I had a 15-passenger van we had to drive around to get all 8 of us inside and luggage, and that got like 10 miles to the gallon. Talk about burning, excess oh, man, that's horrible, and you're eating more, and you can save the planet if you have less kids.
Al Gore and a bunch of people flew their private jets to the environmental conference.
Yeah. So is that true? Is our world, what's the population of the world doing these days? It's actually starting to decline, because China, with their one-child forced rules, China and India were the two countries where most of the growth was. Unfortunately, COVID has kind of eliminated some of the, the potential growth too. But I'm just saying, for the church, for God's church, children are part of the plan, because that's how we are going to keep the gospel being spread in the generations after us. So, I know this is kind of controversial, because you're only supposed to have that 1.75, and really 1.5 would be better, but again, it's hard to know which parts to eliminate. But children are a blessing from God, every single one. What if they're handicapped? They're a blessing from God, every single one. And quite honestly, I think some of the handicapped people that I've known in my life were some of the most inspirational people I've ever met. And I'm saying that sincerely.
You have a friend, what was the quote your friend gave you?
Which one?
The one about how the way he looks at his child. That everything
Yeah, so one of my coworkers at the other place has a child that would be considered, mentally disabled. She exists at the second grade level. She is a middle-aged woman. But to her, it's like she's in second grade. And he says he considers that the best blessing he's ever had, short of me working with him now, I'm sure. But I'll tell him that. Yeah. But why? Because he said every Christmas is still magical for her and for him. She still gets excited about all the same things that, because now, it's kind of like, oh, it's Halloween. I don't really want to carve a pumpkin, Well, you got to carve a pumpkin, for if you have someone that's in the second grade, and you got to do this and you got to do that. And that's part of those traditions that makes things exciting. He considers his daughter a great blessing. Yeah, it's true, she's probably never going to go to college and graduate with a PhD. That's not what makes you a valuable person. Go ahead, Daryl.
One of the teachers that I taught with, she had a child that was handicapped and still is, and he's probably in his early 40s now, probably. But yet, he's probably maybe a fourth grade level to most, and just the nicest guys you ever want to meet. And he tries to do all kinds. And she had on Facebook the other day, and I chuckled something fierce. Said she got an income tax return from the state. He intercepted it and wrote on the envelope, "Happy Mother's Day." and then she said, "That's a nice try, Jody, but that's not." But I text back and said, "I like the way that boy thinks."
Yeah, there you go.
But so he contributes to society. He really does.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what. One of the group of babies that gets aborted most of the time is Down syndrome children. And breaks my heart, because Down syndrome children, adults, are some of the nicest, most loving people you will ever know. I remember, I guess I was in college, and I volunteered to be a counselor at a mentally developed week at, it's camp, a Christian camp, kind of like Camp Lindhaven up in Wisconsin. And they did this training for us that were rookies, and it was kind of scary, because they were saying, oh, no, this could happen, and they went over worst-case scenarios. And the thing they didn't prepare me for is that all of the campers would love me. I didn't do anything, but they loved me because I was there for them. I mean, quite honestly, when I go to senior week at Camp Lindhaven, I don't get that kind of response from most of you, just saying. Not many people are fighting to get a hug from me, just saying. All right, wait till this year. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Rex.
Several years ago, I was on an overnight
up to get you a big hug. And her mother was kind of, didn't know how I was going to respond. Because a lot of people, she said, that we were close or whatever. As I found out, she was a former flight attendant that had to retire to take care of her daughter. But you talk about the unconditional love that that little girl has. She had no fear, but just came up and hugged me just because of it made my day. So I've seen that a couple times.
Yes, and I just, so I'm kind of taking way too long for us, what should have been a small point, but I'm guilty of that a lot. But just consider, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth. That's the plan. And our world is not in danger from people having a few more children. I'm just going to tell you that. They will be a blessing. They are part of the solution, not part of the problem. All right, keep going. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living creature that moves on the ground. So evolution says what? People are animal life, right? God, Genesis 1, has a different, people are not the same as animals, different. You know, look at the word that's used there. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over. We are to take care of this planet. We're caretakers of what God has created. And I'd just like to point that out because to me, you know, why some people would say it doesn't matter how it came about. Yes, it does. If we're just an accident, if we're just an accident of nature and, you know, and we're no different than a slug, you know, well, then I guess we've got no purpose, and, you know, might as well eat, drink, and be merry, have fun, do whatever you want, because that's all there is, right? But when we're made in the image of God and blessed by God to be caretakers of the planet He made for us, that's a different approach to our understanding of humanity. Quite honestly, abortion is a logical thing if we're just animals. You know, we do that. If we have too many dogs and they go to the dog shelter, some of them, unfortunately, end up being killed, right? And we feel bad about that. In fact, we feel bad about that even more so than babies being killed, it seems like. But you know, we don't attach the huge value to animals or to human life that we apparently do to even animals. We're special, made in the image of God. Keep going, because I got it. Yeah. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. So, what did people eat originally? Garden. Plants. Yeah, and I kind of had a moral objection. I wanted to skip one part of the one verse there. Do you know which one?
Green.
Yes. And I give every green plant. I wanted to at least leave out the word green. I give every plant is how I would have read it. But that seems to make me a false teacher if I'm editing words out of God. And I didn't want to do that. But no, we were all supposed to eat animals and people. We eat plants. Now, why is that critical? Because death was not part of the Garden of Eden at this point. Animals didn't kill other animals. You know, robins didn't pick up worms and cut them into pieces to feed their little babies. You know, there wasn't death. Death comes chapter 3. But it was all life.
There were no carnivores.
There were no carnivores at all. So, yes. And you have people that argue, well, see, these type of teeth, these were meant to be meat eaters. And but it's interesting, some of the animals that have the same type of teeth are just plant eaters. So things changed as a result of the fall. And when we get to Genesis 3, you'll see some of that hinted at. It doesn't spell out all the changes, but you see what it says. But death is not a factor at this point. So people didn't eat flesh of animals or anything like that. They ate plants. And they were well nourished with those green beans and peas and greens. I'm having trouble saying that. And lettuce and what else is green? Asparagus. Yeah, they were well blessed. See, I said it. I'm not a false teacher. Pain me. But that was the plan. And death is not part of Garden of Eden at this point. And you see that. Now, does that mean that our mission team was serving hamburgers yesterday? In fact, I consumed 2 of them. And by the way, Doug, they were delicious. So kudos to whoever made those. Those were really good. Now, did I do something wrong? Because here it says, right? Eat plants. So are we sinning?
Joined you yesterday.
Because after the fall again, that's when things changed, and that's when they give instructions of what animals you could and couldn't eat and stuff.
Yeah, so
like
God
that.
gave specific instructions to the people of Israel. These animals you can eat, and these you should not. And then in the New Testament, he takes away some of those limitations. But how do we know that it's okay for humans to consume meat now? Well, since Jesus never sinned, and we know he ate several types of meat for sure. What types of meat do we know for sure he ate? Fish. Sheep. Right. Passover meal was for sure, right? Yeah. So we know those 2. There would have been more. You remember in the Old Testament, God provided the people of Israel with quail so that they could eat. So I'm just saying, that's not a sin issue. It's that life changed because of the fall. But in the beginning, no death at all. No death at all. All right, and then verse 31. God saw all that he made, and it was very good. And I'm going to get a special guest. But if you look back, like at verse 9, it says, and God saw that it was good. So he said it was good, it was good, it was good, it was good. Now, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. So this is one of them that you and I have talked about. So I'm bringing in a special guest lecturer who has far more knowledge on that section than me. By the way, I told everyone he was the best golfer, and I had people pay me so they could be on their team yesterday.
And they came in last.
Shh, quiet.
There are some things you should listen to your pastor on, and some things you just should not. So I appreciate just a few moments here. So just for clarification, so you know, in 2008, I was invited to teach a course at a seminary, 2 seminaries, one in Bangkok, Thailand, and one in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Fledgling Lutheran seminaries in Southeast Asia. And I was assigned Genesis 1 through 3, a course called God and Creation. So that was my introduction to this text. And frankly, it has consumed me to the point where if I studied no other text than Genesis 1 through 3, it'd be fine. And I'll never get to the bottom of it. Neither will you. So I want to just make a point here that requires just a bit of background. So in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We touched on this a couple of weeks ago, but the word for God in the Hebrew is Eloah. And Eloah is a singular noun that is the word for power. When we read in the Hebrew text, however, in the beginning, God, it is not Eloah, but Elohim. And in the Hebrew, when you put an im ending at the end of a noun, it's like us putting an S. It pluralizes it. So the word here is Eloah, but it's Elohim, which makes the singular into a plural, and the word has to do with power. So whereas God is powerful, you now pluralize that, and the Hebrew rarely has a plural that is just two. It is always three or more. And so this is an extent of power that is pluralized. And this separates the God of Israel from the gods of the unbelievers, in that the gods of the unbelievers, each god had its own realm over which it had power. So you had the god of the harvest, you had the god of war, you had the god of fertility. Each one had its own singular power. The God of Israel, though, has this plurality of power that covers everything. And so in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And as we said before, this is the heavens and the earth, the Shemayim, which is it's the same word used for the heavens, the sky, with the stars, where the planets are, the outer space. But it's also the word used for the heavens where the angels are and the throne of God is. But the earth is the Haaretz, and this is the realm in which we live. Now, what follows is this 6 days, each marked by the morning or the evening and the morning, which is the Hebrew way of counting time. Evening begins the day through the evening. At the end of each day, two things happen in repetition on each day. And it's this translating law of repetition that you always want to pay attention to, because what's repeated in the scriptures is really important and really meant to be paid attention to. And so what's repeated on each day is two things. First of all, God sees what he has created out of this formless and void. He's created something out of it, and he sees it, and then he pronounces his divine benediction on it. And he says, it is good. Now, the Hebrew word for good is tov. We would say T-O-V. And tov is not like our good. So we would say something is good. And what we mean by that is it's acceptable, it's what it's supposed to be, but for us, what's good could always be better. And then if you get better, the next step is for it to be best. And the best is always relative, depending on how it suits you. For God, it's not like that. When tov is the word, tov means good, and this means exactly what he had in mind, in the mind of God. So when I was in high school and shop class, we would get instructions on how to build a birdhouse, and the blueprints were before us, and we had to cut out the pieces of wood. And Doug and the guys on the Building Bridges team will attest to you that this is true. My end, what I produced, was never anything like what the blueprint looked like, right? It was not my thing. With God, it's exactly what he had in mind, and the mind of God is perfect. So on each day, he sees what he has done, and he says it is good, exactly what he had in mind. So that means that each part and piece of creation is exactly what God had in mind. But then when we get to the 6th day, something different happens. He sees, first of all that he has made, and then he says something different. It is very good. And the Hebrew here is tov mioth. Now, when we get to this word mioth, it is a word of harmony. Harmony. So what you can have is all of the individual parts and pieces down to the smallest molecule, exactly what God had in mind. But unless there's harmony between all of these individual parts and pieces, it's not good. So when God creates, has done creation on the sixth day, and he says it is all tov mioth, it means each individual part and piece that he has created along the way works together in perfect harmony with all of the other parts and pieces that he has made along the way, so that it all works in ecological harmony, and it is pure joy, pure joy. One of the places in the scriptures that I think is my favorite expression of this is in Job chapter 38, where after Job gets done his questions, all of his defenders get done questioning Job, God steps in and he says, now you answer me this question. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? And then in verse 3 he says, where were you when I set the limits and the morning stars sang together? That's tov mioth. That's perfect harmony. And you can picture it, the morning stars singing together. In verse 5, he says, where were you when I said to the sea, this far may your proud waves come and no farther? That's tov mioth. Everything working together in perfect harmony. And so when the seed is planted in the ground receives the seed just as it should. And the clouds, the evaporation from the sea holds water in the clouds, and the clouds let just the right amount of water on it, no more. And the seed bears its fruit, and the man he has created eats the seed, and then things just go the way that they are intended by the Creator to go. Two things come out of this in terms of application. First, when we come to an evaluation of the way our world works today, it's certainly not like this. But what we cannot say is that, well, we got a faulty creation and this is the way it goes. You can't say that. So if you've rented a car and along the way you drove it, turned it back in, and when you do, they say, here's a dent. And you say, no, that was there when we got it. You can't do that with creation, which is an entirely different story than the story of evolution, which starts with faulty and continues to try to, over time, get to tov mioth, which just doesn't work that way. The second part, the thing that we take away from in our own practical experience is that we're a part of this creation, and that we too are designed to work in perfect harmony with all of the other parts and pieces that God has created. And so that, I think, and thanks for that opportunity. So that just gives us a different perspective than we have talked through so far, not contradictory in any way, but a little bit of different sort of background. Thanks.
And you can see he's studied this to an amazing degree. And so we're going to be doing that on and off. I'm going to have him come up and share briefly some of the insights that he's had from his studies. Because quite honestly, I didn't even study Hebrew because it wasn't required at the seminary when I went through. So I can't do some of the stuff that he just explained to you. So we appreciate that. So when did it go where it wasn't working all together in perfect harmony? When
we sinned.
Yeah, sin. Genesis 3, the fall. And, because we want to say, well, if God's a loving God, why is there cancer? Why is there this? Why is there hurricanes and tornadoes? And why is there all those things that we don't like? And as Pastor Nielsen said, it's not that we can go back and say God made a bad creation. it's on us. It's really on us. But, yeah. Okay, we're going to be stopping real soon, but let's go just a little bit more. So we technically stopped at very good, and there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Now look at the next part. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. And then go in verse 2, by the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from its work, all his work, and God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Because of it, on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Now there's a lot in that, and we're just going to take one or two little pieces right now, and we'll pick this up next week. But what day is the seventh day? Saturday. Saturday is the seventh day. So Saturday was the holy day. In the Old Testament, when it says, remember the Sabbath day, that was Saturday. And, of course, we have groups today that claim, in fact, they claim, Seventh-day Adventists claim that the mark of the beast, the way you can tell those who are secretly involved with Satan, is Sunday worship. If you worship God on Sundays, that's a sign that you're actually been deceived by the beast, Satan. When did God's people change from Saturday worship to Sunday worship? The resurrection. First day of the week became the eighth day, became the most significant because there was a new creation on the eighth day. So Saturday was the seventh day, but God had a brand new creation. He raised Christ from the dead on a Sunday morning, the eighth day. And from then on, the church, and we see this in throughout the New Testament, the church gathered on Sundays for worship. Sunday became the holy day, although they had big fights about it back then, like we do still today. And some said, well, you should be worshiping on Saturday still. And some said we should be worshiping on Sunday. And what does Paul say? Yeah, just worship. He says, don't let anyone judge you based on what day you're worshiping. You know, it doesn't matter. Because, see, a lot of the commandments were modified slightly because of Christ. By that, I'm not saying the moral law changed. But there are a lot of things that, why don't we have animal sacrifices anymore?
God sacrificed himself.
Yeah, because we've had the one and for all sacrifice. Animal sacrifices were all designed to remind us of the one who is coming. So, you know, there's a lot of things in the Old Testament that were fulfilled in Christ, and that day of worship was filled in Christ. And the seventh day became the day. So don't let anyone judge you about that. If they want to argue you should worship on Saturday, well, tell them you can worship on Saturday, you can worship on Sunday. We've even worshiped on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and we had a Saturday worship when it was going to snow on Sunday morning, and most of you won't come to church if there's 14 inches of snow, so we moved the worship service up till Saturday. It was all good. It doesn't matter what day. What matters is that you worship. We got a lot more to talk about this. So we'll talk more about the significance of the 7-day time period. We got to talk about God finished or completed. So we got more stuff, and those are foreshadows of what we're going to talk about. But we need to end because it's time for people to come in. But let's close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity to study your word. And we pray that as we study your word, we will see you as the all-powerful, all-loving God that you are, and that we'll be drawn closer to you. And Lord, do help us not just to hear your word, but believe